conversation has
Yeah.
gone full circle. So, which is beautiful. That was perfect. You hit like every single question I was going to ask you, and I didn't even need to ask them. You just said it. It was great. So you are what I would call now like a wildlife photographer, conservation photographer, whatever title you want to give yourself. So what strategies did you take to enter a pretty saturated field? I love Instagram. It's my favorite social media platform for sure. And there are so many phenomenal wildlife photographers out there. So, how did you get in? What was your strategies? How did you start to build a platform yourself in something completely new that you just even found out about like 2 years ago?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I always, after my trip to Alaska, I was into photography. I started taking pictures consistently after Alaska. Bought a camera before I even got back. I bought an expensive lens before I even had a body. I bought it in Anchorage before flying out because it's tax free up there. And so I
That's
took
hilarious.
pictures I guess the first important step is taking pictures, right? Going out to places I loved in Colorado, the sand dunes, Crested Butte, obviously, but on my trips to Greenland, and I had done some personal trips to Portugal, all over Europe, just shooting as much as I could, in places that inspired me. I think something important to know with photography is you have to be truly passionate and you have to truly love your subjects, um, to be able to capture them in a way that's impactful and that makes people see them the way you do. If you don't really truly care about your subjects and you're just trying to get cool photos, you're not going to have that magic. So my number one advice is try and keep that magic, keep that spark, keep something that you're deeply, deeply passionate about, in your photography. So after all this practice moving out here, um, I had, been inspired by a few photographers, both big name photographers, famous Nat Geo photographers or whatever, who opened my eyes to really cool photography. But more importantly, seeing, people my age, getting into photography and becoming successful over time. And one of my closest friends now, Brooke Bartleson, she's on Instagram at Brooke Little Bear, who I had been following for 2 years. I started following her back in Colorado after she liked a picture of me eating shit, trying to learn a 360 on a snowboard. And I was like, Brooke Little Bear, that's a cool name. So I checked her out and I loved her work.
Yeah, it's
Followed her
beautiful.
and started sending her DMs and stuff, and was like, hey, like, blah blah blah, whatever. We were chatting back and forth for like 2 years. We're like, all right, let's meet up this weekend, because she lived in Silverthorne, right where we had our ski house, for NatHab, and we never really met up. And when I moved out to Jackson, I mean, this is just like a classic example of life setting you up right when you need, right when it's right when you need something. Um, Maybe 2 weeks after I moved here, Brooke was coming up to shoot here in Jackson Hole, and I was like, hey, let's hang out.
I'm here.
Um, and so we did, and we had an epic day. Like, for a first day ever shooting together, I don't think you could possibly ask for a better sequence of wildlife events. I mean, started our morning with like elk or moose separately. Then we met up, roadside in the park with like a black bear cub climbing in a berry bush, literally 5 feet off the road, and we had like a whole half hour with this little bear. No pun intended, that I ran into a little bear with, Brooke
Little
Little
bear.
Bear. That was how we met. And then we drove up to Yellowstone. We were just like, screw it, let's go up to Yellowstone and look for great gray owls, where we had an incredible great gray owl photo shoot, where this owl even came down and landed on Brooke's head at one point.
Shut up.
Literally flew down,
I would have been like
unbaited,
crying.
wild owl. This owl was sitting. We were in a not too far from the lake, and this owl flies down from its perch straight towards me. I was standing next to Brooke, and then mid-flight switches focus to Brooke, and I see it lower itself onto her head, and I was like, "This is not real. Like, what is going on?"
It's like
And this
Harry
is just a
Potter
young.
right now or something. Like
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So just a crazy day. And so I would say the most important thing has been my network, honestly. I just started talking to a lot of people. I mean, Brooke was the first, but there's a bunch of others. Other photographers in the area from Salt Lake or like surrounding areas. I mean, the list is long. Savannah Rose Wildlife is great. Grizzly Manchild, Peter Mangolds is his full name. Also an inspiration. He was a Yellowstone Ranger. People like Lidybug, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on. There's a ton of awesome photographers here. So the first step for me in really breaking through was just honestly becoming friends with these photographers and seeing what it was about here and how people approached wildlife photography and kind of entering it on my tippy toes, observing, slightly had imposter syndrome, but, getting a feel for it. And then really just putting myself in a position to get these images where I think the first 2 months I came out here, I literally went out and shot every single day. Like there was not a single day where I did not go out and take pictures. And that, led me to more and more connections through local newspapers who started resharing my photos through conservation organizations like Jackson Hole Alliance, and then reconnecting with old friends from NatHab, guides such as Justin, Drew Hamilton, who lives up in Alaska, amazing photographer and conservationist, has been instrumental in the fight against Pebble Mine.
Yes, he has.
So really just like strengthening my network was the number one thing I think I've done to really push my career forward in photography.